Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Minded Accountant podcast. My name is Lee Reams. I'm the founder and CEO of CountingWorks. Today, I'm joined with Rebekah Barton, our Chief Visibility Officer. Rebekah, if you could say hello.
Hey, everybody. Happy April Fool's Day.
Oh, it's going to be a happy April Fool's Day. I'm like, how many times could I have gotten nailed already? I'm like, every Slack message from when I woke up started work at 5 a.m. this morning. I've been very careful. I'm like, okay, be on guard. But, as we get closer to April 15th, things get quiet, right? So then all of a sudden there's a pause. You take a few days off. And that quiet can be quite dangerous because right now you're probably, unless you're superhuman, exhausted. Your team is exhausted and your brain is telling you just move on, right? But here's the reality. We've seen a bunch of different studies. Flowcast came out with something that 99% of accountants experience some level of burnout. If you've been on LinkedIn or Reddit, I'm seeing everyone. I'm going to say it's 100% of accountants experience some level of burnout. But the realities are, 3 out of 4 accountants are dealing with burnout coming out of busy tax season. So whether you believe 99%, whether you believe 75%, it is there, it is real. So you're feeling it. And that's not just you, it's the profession, it's our industry. But that's where most firms kind of miss the opportunity. This is the moment when your firm, your practice is sitting on this really valuable data that it will produce all year, right? So if you capture it now and you analyze it and not just go and rest and then kind of recharge and you're ready to go back on the loop, the hamster loop, the same way as last year, hopefully you're not going to repeat some of the things that you consider problems. So I'm going to start here with most firms don't have a discipline problem. They have a timing problem. And right now you remember you're in the middle of the end of tax season, right? So you remember what broke. It's fresh in your mind. You recall what clients, the same question over and over again, and I have to respond. You remember where the stress hit. You remember where you become the bottleneck. You're approving every proposal, for example. You realize that people aren't doing the engagement letters like they're supposed to because you don't have an automated system. And you remember that some clients created complete chaos for you, right? But in 2 weeks, my feelings, maybe you go away for a little while, a couple margaritas, you'll come back and you're going to be rested, you're going to forget. It's just like time kind of does that, right? And that's how firms, specifically in the tax and accounting space, firms that don't like change, they feel risk at times. That's when you get stuck. And not because you don't care, it's because you just waited too long and you kind of missed the opportunity. So I believe that you have another challenge that is really starting to make things break more often, and that is the labor shortage. And this isn't getting any easier. The demand for our services in tax and accounting, even with AI and disruption, is going up, right? A recent survey said 87% of firms say talent shortage is their biggest challenge right now. So the demand is rising, your capacity is shrinking, which means what you just experienced is likely the easiest version of tax season you're going to have going forward, meaning it's only going to get harder and harder. And the thing that's happening at the same time is clients' expectations are rising. And I think you see that as well, Rebekah, even just in like our website creation and the way we're doing branding for our clients. I mean, we're basically an ad agency now for tax and accounting firms. So the old days, you put together a cookie cutter site, you just put it out there and you did business as usual. Now, your referrals from word of mouth may be going to ChatGPT. If you're not targeting an existing audience, you're maybe not being mentioned in SEO or geo anymore. And there's a lot of things here that have changed that you need to start kind of reacting to. And you can give a few examples before I get into this exercise.
Yeah, so it's a major shift. Even from a couple of years ago, I would say, as AI has become increasingly important and gained market share within search. So we're wanting to tell stories. We're wanting to put narrative out there. We're niching down in a way that I don't think a lot of tax and accounting firms were before. The more I talk to people recently, within, I would say, the past 6 to 12 months, the more they're wanting to choose a niche, even if they never have before. They're starting to understand the importance of really offering these hyper niche services where you can provide great value to people within specific demographics or specific industries. So I would say that's been a massive shift that I've seen in working with people on kind of the marketing side. As well as, like you mentioned, Lee, not having these cookie cutter websites anymore. We don't want the same terminology that everyone's using. Telling your story matters. Geo engines in particular, that's going to be ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, any of the generative search systems. They want to know who you are, and they don't care if you do taxes well. Everybody says they do taxes well. They want to know that you do taxes for small retail business owners who make less than $10 million a year well. So really having that kind of specific language has been a big shift, I think, from what I'm seeing for more of the marketing and branding end of things.
Yeah, the reset isn't just the ChatGPT wants that. Your customer wants that. Your prospect wants that. They want to connect with you. They want to see that you know their vertical. They know you could sit in their shoes and understand. I think that's kind of the big takeaway here. So let's go through a quick exercise here. If you're at your desk or you could take some notes, write this down. And through the next 5 minutes or so, we're going to kind of talk about what are the steps that you need to take to do, we'll call it a pain audit. And we'll go through step by step, kind of the exercise I would suggest you do. You can go to like a tool like Max Intelligence and say, hey, I want to audit, the last tax season, and here are all the questions. What would you do? And it will walk you through the same kind of audit. So I didn't do any download. I just kind of did a mental exercise, right? So, what are the 3 to 5 moments this tax season where you thought, this cannot happen again. I do not want to repeat it. And just pause, right? And don't generalize, be specific. The client who delayed everything, the process that broke, maybe chasing documents from your clients, our clients no-showing appointments, right? At what point in the tax season did your team hit a wall? Was that March 7th? Let all of that come up and let's talk about that. And let's start writing it down and kind of looking at it. And then you look at these moments and you say, what repeated? Not once, but over and over again. Maybe there were common questions that occurred inside your client hub or emailed from your clients, right? Same, maybe the questions were about the tips or overtime, right? So, but over and over again, you got the same questions, the same delays if you didn't have a system in place to respond with the research and, just to get it done quickly, the same confusion. Because that's not random. That's, basically your system, your processes that you use talking to you. There's the feedback. So the question then is, where are the bottlenecks? Often in smaller firms, it is the main partner. Do you become the bottleneck? Are you approving every proposal? Are you reviewing every email, right? Are decisions waiting for you in your judgment? Are client responses slow because you have to approve them? Where was your team waiting on you, right? So because growth stops wherever you slow things down. This is more appropriate for smaller firms. A lot of firms now are doing kind of the pod formats where they're smaller, more agile teams, but there's a lot of things you can learn just by looking at that. So, the next question is, where did you give advice that didn't get charged properly? This is slope creep. And we just talked about it in a previous podcast a couple of months ago. It is a big deal. Surveys say it could be 20% of revenue lost because we didn't charge correctly. We didn't have the proper engagement letter. We didn't have the details in our proposal. What are you responsible for? This is what I'm responsible for. If we go out of scope, this is what we charge. So think about it. These are those quick questions, those last minute calls, that extra guidance. Perhaps you're doing advisory consulting without having an advisory agreement, right? And that's not admin work. That is true revenue potential, right? So CFO advisory, we see that common in a bookkeeping type of client or an accounting client where you lose scope. You go into now, planning for an exit, right? And in most firms they miss it. They miss the revenue opportunity there. So I think it's another important area. So now let's look at this. If you could fix just one of those things, which one would have the biggest difference? So let's just say having a tool like Max Intelligent write a pre-written, pre-researched response to every client hub message, so that when you came in the morning, all 10 of those messages in your client hub had already been researched, cited, referenced, right? This is the research. This is what it is. with a strategy included, would that just by itself make a big difference for you in time, right? Time saving, and more important, your responsiveness to your clients, the quality of your advice. And now I'm saying, okay, we don't have to fix everything, but let's start fixing one thing at a time. So, if you could fix one thing and start there and save dozens of hours per week, I don't know, that sounds good. Would that reduce stress across your team? Probably. Would that completely change next season? Yes, it opens you up for more advisory, maybe earlier evenings, going home. So, once you go through this, you probably notice something. Your problems aren't necessarily random. They point directly to your biggest opportunities. So now I'm going to talk about what I believe are the biggest opportunities. I consider three of them that I'm going to call these low-hanging fruit. So I know there's a lot of noise and people are telling you got to, revamp everything and go all in with new bulky software. I'm saying maybe you don't need to do that much. Maybe there's just a few things that you can look at that really move the needle. So the first one, and we kind of glanced at it, is fix your positioning. And I think this is really important just to set the expectations for you and your clients, help you attract the right kind of clients that you want to work with. I think that makes it more profitable, right? So might not be more volume. It might be alignment. So we're seeing this across the industry. Rebekah's already talked about it. Firms with clear position, and we see it in our client base. There's no question in my mind that firms that are positioned attract better clients. They charge more. They have waiting lists for clients. They have less friction with clients, right? So they've set the expectations. They don't have bottlenecks. Clients know I need to get my documents to you. I know these are deadlines. This is my responsibility. We're partners, right? But you've got to articulate that through your marketing and in your messaging. So it's not, often I hear accountants say, well, I don't do marketing. I don't need marketing. Everything you communicate is marketing, right? So let's think about this. What were your best 5 clients this season? Who were the easiest to work with and perhaps had the best ROI? Someone you really valued and had fun with working. Who valued your expertise? Who didn't push back on your fees? And that's not random. That's your signal, okay? And that's where you can start understanding visibility today isn't just about ranking. It's about resonance. And so let's talk about this a little bit. Rebekah, where do you see, and when I talk about setting the expectations, let's go through a client's website and let's just talk about how do I work? How and putting all that message in and putting it in a narrative format, how does that help establish kind of the rules of the road, so to speak?
So from the start, your website is going to be kind of your calling card. It's going to tell people exactly who you are, exactly what you do, exactly what they can expect from you. And in today's world, you have a real opportunity on your website to establish this baseline of exactly what your target audience can expect from you. It's also a great way for people to self-qualify. One of the things we hear a lot is that people are getting calls from clients who they don't want to work with. So having a really clear narrative is a great way to help people self-select. If you say, hey, I only work with pediatricians who live in the Birmingham, Alabama area, for example, then anyone who is not a pediatrician in central Alabama is not going to be likely to call you. So you're not going to have to field so many calls, so many people you don't want to work with. That frees up time in and of itself and reduces your stress level. So what you can do on your site, we always tell people when we're going through our website styles is that it's going to say, who you are, what you do, who trusts you, how can I get in touch with you? So you want that hero section, that top portion of your website, to establish right away who you serve and what you offer. From there, you're going to want people to scroll down. They're going to be hooked. You're going to show them exactly the services you offer, whether that's tax preparation and planning, bookkeeping, virtual CFO. You want to showcase these things. Your homepage should basically take people on a journey of what they can expect when they work with you, not what they can expect when they work with a generic tax and accounting firm. Everything should be customized. It should be personalized to exactly what you do. This is a great way to help clients understand what to expect. And then exactly like you were saying, Lee, that proper positioning bleeds over into tax season because you're not going to be answering so many random questions. People are going to understand what they need to do and what you need to do. So you're setting the baseline early, literally from day one, from the time they visit your website, of what you do, who you are, and what they do during this whole process. So it's key. Everything on your website is going to be crucial to establishing your position in the market and exactly who you serve.
So I'm going to lead into the next big one, which is advisory, but this is kind of narrative as well. And what we've been doing is putting in what I'll call autopilot. We call them playbooks, but upsell campaigns that are related to a specific type of advisory service, whether that be taking tax prep to tax advisory, whether that be taking a bookkeeping or accounting client to CFO advisory, maybe it's capital advisory, what type of lending tools should you be using, those kind of things. And what we've done is we created a system, and this is like that low-hanging fruit. If you do not have a system in place where you're educating the value to your clients, and that's something I think a lot of people miss. And Rebekah mentioned, oh, well, these are my services, but you're not talking, what is the pain point of your client? What is that dream or that outcome? What is that financial outcome that they want to receive? So if you can now capture that in a story, blog it, social media, outbound emails, but make that part of your process automatically going year round, now you have a system in place that will generate more advisory services, more lucrative, helping your clients more, better financial outcomes. Rebekah, so explain kind of what that process looks like, how often how we set those up, some of the results we've heard from clients already calling like, why is everyone calling me about advisory services? Because we turned the playbook on, sir.
Yeah. So these do work. That's a great example. We did have a client who was like, wow, I've been getting so many calls for advisory. And he had forgotten that on a marketing call, his upsell playbook for advisory services was turned on, but it works. So what we do when we create a playbook is that we really think through the drip campaign process and what's going to really work and hook people. You can customize it within our system, whatever type of system you're using. So basically, when you're doing this, what you want to do is take the client once again on a journey. You want them to be able to put their shoes into whatever story you're telling. So you want to address things like the pain points that you've been hearing from clients during your tax meetings this year. Take that information and put it into the emails that you're sending out. Put it into the social media posts that you're sending out. Because if that's what you've been hearing, those are the types of things that are going to resonate with upsell clients, with the people you're trying to reach to sort of move into these higher packages. So maybe, for instance, we were talking about, pediatricians and medical professionals a few minutes ago. So perhaps there's some sort of a pain point that they are having repeatedly. Maybe it has to do with their payroll or with managing, staff members and payroll taxes. So that could be a pain point if you've heard it several times that you could start addressing in an ad campaign or a social media campaign. You could start doing YouTube videos about it. The more you address these pain points across different channels, not only are you going to resonate with your viewers and with your followers, but you're going to resonate with the internet, more importantly. And search algorithms are going to start recognizing you as an expert in this space. They're going to start recommending your firm as people search. And that's how you get growth. And that's how you get reach beyond just your clientele. And you can really start growing within your niche.
Yeah, and we're going to continue on. I think opportunity number 2 is capturing advisory revenue. So we talked about how to kind of preload, seed your environment so people know, hey, you do advisory and there's a benefit to it. But more importantly, we're working on tools that allow us to actually find these opportunities within your database. So, and I'm just giving you an example, and I want you to understand too, with AI and chatbots specifically, I see some people using the public tools. I would not do that when putting your public client data into the geo world of chatbots. I definitely use a closed system. And what we do is we will scrape data, so tax returns, uploads, any sort of correspondence. And we actually build context kind of like in a memory that can be looked at by our AI tool. So we call it Max Intelligence. And Max will actually look at clients and surface advisory opportunities. Perhaps someone just had some children. Let's talk about 529 plans or some sort of college savings plans. I can go on and on. Maybe someone just started a business. We can do all kinds of things, but there's signals inside your client base that happen every day. You just don't necessarily have a system that tracks it, right? You don't follow up, you don't systemize it. And I think that's the beauty of technology and where it's going. That is real value, right? That's the shift we're seeing. So firms that are using tools like Max Intelligence will identify those moments. They'll be able to trigger automated follow-ups, perhaps a proposal that goes out that says, hey, I suggest, it would even draft the email and, say, hey, congratulations on, so-and-so's birth, blah, blah, blah. One of the biggest things I see is a lot of people don't start early enough on planning their education or involving grandparents or whatever. Is this something you would like to talk about? You can deliver these insights automatically. And that's when a system that's in place, that is a huge opportunity, right? That's where you're going to capture, I don't know, do you grow revenue 15% because of this a year? Probably, maybe more. If you take a bookkeeping client to $2,000 a month, now they're worth $24,000. You get 5 clients to upgrade because you've been doing proactive outreach or finding opportunities and personalizing them at scale. That's a big deal. That's another opportunity post-tax season I really think you should look at. And it's not necessarily by doing more work, but you're not letting the opportunities slip by. Which leads me into my last opportunity. And I think this is one that everyone can relate to, specifically in tax season. And one of the biggest constraints in your firm today, it's not necessarily demand, it's obviously your time. And most systems today, and even, when I went through this with our own revamp, we revamped CountingWorks from the ground up, and I was creating all these tools. But what I realized is I was just making more work for our accountants, right? Instead of everything working in the background, just working and then coming to you and say, okay, what do you want to do now? It did all the work. A lot of times I had it so you had to go say, okay, I need to create a proposal versus the proposal being made because it found an opportunity. And that creates, I think, friction. It creates more steps. It actually creates more inputs for a tax and accounting pro and more dependence on you. So the shift I'm seeing now and what we're doing on our own system is look for a platform that removes work, not adds to it. And that's what AI enables. It's able to look at huge amounts of data, big trusted knowledge bases, and really help you do your job better, right? So it's not a replacement. This is relief. And I think this is a big deal. I think there's going to be big opportunities. One thing I would caution everyone about is there's these big, bulky practice management systems that were built years ago that are adding little AI tools, but they're not AI native. And what I have found is those tools are part of the problem. They create more work. They create more places for things to get lost. So just think about that before you make any decisions on what you're going to do. So I just gave you 3 opportunities that I think are kind of game changers, but just move the needle. These are not huge, I have to change everything type of decisions. But I think doing nothing is not neutral anymore. It's really a decision. Do I want to repeat the same stress, the same hours, the same problems? Now, this is something you don't think about. Your competitors who are making changes are going to be more efficient. They are going to serve their client base better. And at some point, that's going to start eroding your business. Your client relationship is your moat. You got private equity companies coming in and try to commoditize accounting. They're realizing, oh, there's real client relationships here. People don't necessarily like some nameless accountant doing the work, right? You don't want to be that firm. You want to maintain that relationship. You want to maintain that moat. You want to be the most trusted advisor for a reason. So we don't want you just to survive tax season. We want you to be able to thrive, right? So that's kind of the basis of this one. I just wanted to kind of circle back and say, okay, take stock. What worked, what didn't, what are some few little things that I can do? Create a list, go into ChatGPT or whatever tool, and just list all the things that I had challenges with and ask it, what would you do to systemize this? What processes would you put in place? That is how you'll grow and really succeed post-tax season. Take about an hour, it might not even take that. And then bring your team in, perhaps get them to give their own guidance. They might see things that you don't. They have their own relationships. You might see different holes and they're like, oh my, you have no idea what's going on, what we're really doing and how we're rubber banding all this together. I think it's really important. So from there, just fix one thing and then go from there and go fix the second thing, right? I think you'll be much better positioned here in the future. So tax season already gave you the answers, and let's make sure that exhaustion does not erase them. So that is it for this. This is going to be our last tax season podcast. Rebekah and I are both We're taking next week off spring break for both of us. But quite honestly, this is like the beginning before heavy education, thought leaderships, podcasts. We have a ton of stuff coming post tax season. That is when we are the busiest. So we hope you've had a very successful tax season. Hang in there. You're almost there. We look forward to re-engaging with you after April 15th. Again, thanks for being a subscriber and listener to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast. Until next time, enjoy the final push. Thank you.